Thanks for attending. I'm Brad Shields. I'm the BI practice lead. And as I was coming into work this morning, I was thinking back about the first time I was exposed to Qlik. And it was back in 2006, around this time. So I'm thinking this is about my 14th year of doing QlikView and now QlikSense. So got a bit excited about that. It's been a long time. Most of you probably know us as part of ABM Systems. About 2 or 3 years ago, ABM became part of the Decision Inc. group, and we recently rebranded ourselves to be Decision Inc. Australia. So that's been a really interesting thing for us. It's given us a lot more resources around the world, a lot more clients around the world. So I've just thrown up a slide here. And what I wanted to show in the slide here is where our customers are based. So lots of customers in Africa, South Africa in particular, up in the UK, across in Australia, even one or two in Japan and a few in America now. So it's certainly given us a diversity of client base, which makes it really good when we come across a new industry or a new type of client, because you might be new to us in Australia, but you're not going to be new to the Decision Inc. group because of the diversity of client base. So I find that really exciting. I'm going to skip through the next slides a little bit quickly because the main topic here that we want to talk about is what's new in Qlik. But basically our reason for existence as Decision Inc. is to drive transformation. And we do that by bringing together capabilities needed to help organizations grow and thrive in this new digital age that we all live in. We help our clients to harness the power of data, modernize their technology platforms, and capitalize on new technology. And so we work with those clients to optimize and automate operations, create digital growth, create stunning digital experiences, and build digital talent and culture. And I just wanted to quickly talk about one of those digital experiences, which is for one of our clients in South Africa, where we've built a loyalty app on that people access via their mobile phones, and that uses a whole lot of machine learning and really smart advanced analytics to offer those clients, when they come into the store, particular offers and deals for the organization over there. And I think that's pretty exciting, and certainly not for all of our clients here in Australia, but it's just a demonstration, I guess, of the breadth of ability that we now have that we can present to our clients. Okay, so I wanted to flash onto this slide. This is a little bit of the global technology capability, the technical skills, the frameworks that we operate in, and even some of the apps that we've built that we use across a multitude of our clients. So it's very different to what we were as ABM. In my opinion, we're much bigger and much broader. So that's exciting days. All right, so let's talk about what's new inside Qlik. And one of the things we're going to talk about is the roadmap that's coming up for Qlik. I don't know if everybody knows the roadmap, but I'm going to talk about it a little quickly. Basically, there are 5 releases yearly. The September release is the one that I'm talking about now. And if you look down to the bottom under November, you'll see that the technical preview for November is actually already available. So I'm looking at the November release already and getting excited about new things that are coming. The other thing that's happened quite broadly, I guess, is that the SaaS platform that Qlik uses is also up and operational. And in fact, we at ABM use that for most of our Qlik analytics now inside our business. And so we just go into the Qlik Cloud version. It gets updated all the time. We don't have to worry about updates and what's in or out. Everything's in each time it's updated. And typically there'll be service releases to that on a very frequent basis, and then more milestone major releases in alignment with the release plan that you see up there. So what were the big things in September? Click described the talking points, the stuff that was exciting, and to be honest, Click has a bit of an emphasis now towards that SaaS platform that I talked about, and so some of these things are available on the SaaS platform and not available yet on the on-prem platform. They'll be available in the November release when it comes out. So one of the things we're going to look at today is the Insight Advisor chat. That's something that's available in SaaS. And it basically gives you the ability to ask questions to the environment, and we'll have a look at that in a little while. I like the fact that I can actually talk to it rather than type. I'm lousy at typing and much happier when I can just talk and it understands my questions. I just looked over to the side here. Cecilia, who looks after our marketing and set this thing up, is sitting next to me, and so that's why I looked away from the screen. Also, there's been some really interesting analytics pieces that have been enhanced, and there's a new section inside the application called Business Logic, and the Business Logic piece is specifically designed to make the Insight Advisor chat work. It's not for anything else inside the application. It's simply used to make that Insight Advisor chat experience as cool as it possibly can be. There's also in the SaaS version increased data capacity, so the apps can be double the size, and there were restrictions on how many reloads you could do a day. That's now gone, and also the storage space has gone. So they're pretty exciting talking points that Click has identified for us. Let's drill into that in a little bit more detail. So in the September release, I've talked about a few of these things already. There's been some releases for end printing and some updates for the data catalog. And I'll just go through a couple of those for you. I'm particularly excited about the journey that data takes from its source systems into our analytics, and then on from analytics into operational systems. And so two of the things that I wanted to just point out that have been updated in this particular release is to do with data catalog. And so data catalog is one of the intermediary steps between your raw data and what goes into analytics. And the catalog allows us to view all of our data resources that we're entitled to see, with obvious governance around those things. And one of the new things for this particular release is that you can now publish those data resources directly into Power BI. It's not Power BI desktop. You need to be on a professional version of Power BI, but then you can publish the data resources directly into Power BI. And the idea from Click is kind of surprising in that they want to be able to support Tableau, Power BI, and Click as the three major players in the Gartner Magic Quadrants. It gives them the ability to publish to all of those analytics tools. Excuse me. And the other thing that I think is amazing is when you take that data out of those source systems, you can build your data warehouse on the fly with almost no coding. Now, my experience with some of our larger clients is that the process of building a data warehouse or a data lake, same kind of rules, is incredibly slow, because what we do is put a whole bunch of really smart SQL people in a room, if we're talking about a data warehouse, and let them code things. So the major advantage of using Click Compose is that coding is all automated. And for those of you that are a little geekier than I am, the default schema that it uses is something called Data Vault. And Data Vault is one that I understand now at least 3 of the 4 big banks are using as their data warehouse schema. And Click Compose does that by default, and does that without you needing to do any coding. Of course, you can go in and tweak a little bit of coding if you need to, but you don't have to build everything from scratch. And I find that really exciting. All right, so we'll have a quick look at why SaaS might be a good idea for clients. here's a couple of key points for it. It removes the infrastructure costs and the upgrade costs that you have when you've got your ClickSense on-premise. And Click looks after those things, so it just happens. There's no need for timeout when you're doing the upgrades and closing everything down. It's just upgraded seamlessly and keeps working. And obviously when it does that, there's zero downtime and those upgrades are seamless. You log in at one time and then you log in the next time and there'll be some changes to the system. That's something that we will be starting to highlight at each of these What's News as well as we move forward. So Click Insights Chat is now available for no charge in the SaaS model, and so we'll demonstrate that in a little while. And you can also consume ClickView apps. If you still have ClickView apps in your environment, you can publish those up into the Click Cloud, and you can't edit them up there, but you can consume them. So my thoughts around this is that if you need to have an on-prem version to do some of your data calculations, go ahead and do that, but then use Click Cloud to do your consumption. That means you can maybe get rid of some of your, let's say as an example, some of your AWS servers, because you don't need those anymore. You can have that all happen up in the cloud. And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes the path to SaaS from where a client might be now is low or no cost. We've certainly done some that are no cost, and we've had some where there's been some low costs involved in upgrading clients into the cloud. Click's also released a tool called Click Data Transfer, and Click Data Transfer is a nice lightweight tool that will pick up data sets and move them up into the cloud for you, and can also trigger the reload of those things up in the SaaS cloud as part of that upload process. And that can be as simple as monitoring a particular folder. There's more to it than this, but a simple way is to monitor a folder, and when something new gets dropped in there, Click Data Transfer will move it up into the cloud. Okay, so we'll have a quick look at Click Catalog. For those of you that haven't seen it, Click Catalog essentially produces some metadata information around each of your data resources. Obviously it's governed, and you can also obfuscate PII data in an automated sense. And then once you've got that data up into the catalog, it's available for all of your analysts and others to see. And once you've got it in there, you can use that to create applications inside ClickSense. And obviously I'd prefer you to use ClickSense, but you can also drop those into Power BI or drop those into Tableau as need be. So love the catalog, and we're getting increasing interest from our clients in that. Okay, now I've talked a little bit about Compose, and this is a big ugly slide with lots of words on it, so I don't want to talk all of the way through this one. The slides will be provided to you afterwards, so you can jump in there and have a good look at those things. But essentially, Compose has been optimized for Snowflake and Azure Synapse, so a couple of options in terms of how that data may be taken from your source systems and placed somewhere inside a data warehouse. We're just overwhelmed with the amount of interest in Snowflake at the moment, in particular. Okay, that's where I'm going to leave that one. Let's talk about those things in Click Data Analytics. So the Insight Advisor chat is available in cloud now and will be available in the November version for you to use. Any of you that have an Insight bot license, you'll be transferred over to Insight Advisor chat without any additional costs. If you don't have it and you would like it, there will be a charge for that one. And so it does a lot of NLP and NLG work. When we have a look at the demo, you'll see that I just speak to it and it answers my questions for me, which is pretty smart. And when you get the results from that, you'll see that it It also gives you some narrative in words inside the insights that are being seen inside there, which I think is pretty exciting. Okay, so in the SAS version, that's where it sits, up in the top right hand corner, right up the top where my mouse is in the screenshot. And I think the next page has a demo.
To speak this question: revenue and margin by product group. So clicks identified, that's what I'm asking for, and it's now searching through the apps to find an appropriate one. Now it's found it in the executive dashboard, and because I asked for 2 measures, it's decided that the best approach for 2 measures and 1 dimension is a scatter chart, which is what it's done there.
So one of the other things that's happened inside that Insight Advisor chat is the first of our really advanced analytics visualizations coming into the tool. So in that particular case, the first one that's coming in is something called K-means clustering. And you'll see in the screenshot that's there that the data has been divided into several categories, and those categories are being calculated based on the K-means clustering formulation. Now that to me is really useful when we're looking at lots of data that's too complicated for us to really get our heads around in a simple manner. And I like it, and it's automated, so I don't even have to know how the function works. I can simply ask the Insight Advisor chat, and if it sees that as a possibility, it'll build that for me. So I see that as being useful in things like segmentation of customers, in maybe fraud detection, and so on. So interesting start, and there's some more coming in the November one, but of course we're just going to talk about September right now.
I can drill further into this chart by clicking on this Explore Further button. When I do that, Click will open the app that the insight came from and then produce the chart for me. But what I wanted to show you here is one of the new features inside ClickSense for 2020, September, and this is something called K-means clustering. So it's clustered these scatter plot points, and it does that automatically for me, so I can add that into the sheet if I want to. I could change this to be 3 clusters or 4 clusters or whatever I thought was appropriate on the fly right here if I needed to. Let me go back to the hub because I want to do another query. And this second query, nice and simple, sales by city. And when I do that, Click will look for where that information could be found, and it's actually going to find it in a different app. And that's really important because it allows a user to come here and ask questions, not knowing where they'll find the data. And as you can see, it's produced a map. So let me explore into this one just a little bit further. So we're now opening a different app. And as we do that, what I want to show you is something that's new inside the Click space for this release, and it's called the logical model. So what I said was sales by city, and inside the logical model, which is used for augmented intelligence to get the right kind of responses, if I scroll down into here, I'll find city, and it's automatically been classified as city, and that particular field inside Click identifies it as being a geo field, so therefore it produces a map for me.
All right, so the next section that I'd like to start to talk about are the things that are in September, that are in both the cloud SaaS version and also inside the on-premise version. So lots of new pieces in visualizations. One of them is an improved reference line. So you can have vertical and horizontal reference lines now and put nice descriptions at the top of what they're about. That's really useful in my mind. Also something that was in ClickView for years. I've been doing Click for too long now, and so I remember the animator piece inside QlikView from many years ago. And essentially with this one, we can play through, for example, a set of time periods and look at the differences that are happening to the data as it builds across that timeline. So I'm going to show you a demonstration of that in a second. And there's been a few other chart improvements. I've always wanted ClickSense to be able to do number formatting on a master measure. So some of you will know what I'm talking about there. You get your master measure and you drag it on, and then you've got to go and say, oh, this one's a number, just like it was last time and the time before. So nice improvement to me in terms of ease of use as a developer is that I can now define that master measure has a particular formatting, like dollars without cents. It just makes things a little bit easier and faster. We can also turn borders on and off in containers. There's a few other bits and pieces that are in the release, but I think they're the main ones. Let's move ahead to the next screen. They're the things that I've just talked about with you. And let's have a look at a quick demo of that.
Is reference lines. We now have the ability to put vertical and horizontal reference lines and to attach some text to those lines to let us know what they are. Also, these lines can be conditionally shown or hidden based on what's been drilled. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What I'd like to have a look at here is something called the animator. This was something that was in QlikView a number of years ago, and I really like the fact that it's back into the ClickSense product now. So when I click on the play button here, it will step through each of the dimensions that's inside whatever field it's looking at, some sort of date field. When I stop it, you can see that we've gone through 19 days and there's been $37,000 worth of sales. I also wanted to show you the pop-up here. Now this is called a tooltip inside Qlik, and what it's doing, it's popping up with the sales value for Millennium, but also it's popping up with the margin. And one interesting new update in the margins area is that this is done with a master measure, and the master measure can now contain the number formatting that you otherwise had to do separately before. So that's a nice improvement. The last one I wanted to show you, let me clear everything here, is frequencies can be in a filter pane now, so we can count up the number of cases of baby wear. We can do that both as a frequency, a counter frequency, but also a relative frequency. So we can see that baby wear is 14.8% of all of the cases that are in this particular filter.
Okay, now for the geeky ones that are out there and listening, I know Tyron in our office was very excited when he saw this, some new abilities to use open source libraries, including Enigma.js and Nebula.js. This is particularly relevant when we're talking about making a mashup. So I talked before about starting with data, putting that into our catalog, then bringing it into ClickSense as an example. But oftentimes the end game is further than just putting it into our ClickSense hub. What we want to be able to do is then embed that into our operational systems, into our websites, into our SharePoint, whatever it happens to be. And having the ability to use these open source libraries really helps fine-tune the look and feel of the mashups when they're in those other systems rather than sitting in the ClickSense hub. Okay, there's also been a few extra connectors. We can connect into Strava now for those of you that are out running like crazy people. MailChimp, Outlook 365, and IMAP. And there's been an update to the Slack connector as well. So they're all good, positive things. One of the things that I'm liking right at the moment is that inside the SaaS hub, so the Cloud Hub, I'm able to take a chart and then monitor that in the kind of home screen, if you like, for my SaaS environment. So when I log in there, say for example, for me, I'm interested in the utilization of my consultants. I can have a particular chart up there that shows me the utilization of my consultants. And if I then want to look further, I've got the ability to drill from there back into the application to drill and look at things a little bit more. Also, I mentioned before that QlikView is able to be viewed inside the SAS environment. Qlik has also added some ability to mail bookmarks around and to share bookmarks with other users. So nice, sensible ideas. Inside the client managed piece, we can distribute apps from QlikSense to multi-node environments. So if you've got some of your QlikView in AWS, but you also want to have some in Google Cloud or Azure, you can do that and then push the applications across. The only requirement for that is that you have something like Okta that allows you to be seen to be the same user in whichever environment you go through. The QMC also has a better status page, which allows me to just click on a button or a filter and see all the apps that belong to me, for example. It's just sensible and doesn't take very long to happen, whereas before it was a little bit more complicated just to see which were my apps that were sitting in the QMC. So that's really all of the things I wanted to show. We've pretty much run out of time. Is it half an hour? You changed for an hour. Oh, okay. All right. So it's good if we finish early, I think, but I'd certainly like to talk about what comes next from here. So a couple of things to talk about, and then I'll go and answer some questions, and hopefully there's lots of questions, so start typing those questions now, and I'll be ready to answer those. So I think we've just recommended that you move to September 2020. We've just finished doing that in our test environment, our dev environment, our prod environment, and we're happy with how it works on-prem. Obviously, if you're in SaaS, it's already happened, but we're recommending the move to September 2020 right now. So if you haven't got the skills internally to do the upgrade, we're more than happy to organize for a small consulting engagement to do that upgrade. Just send that through our support email. That's changed slightly to become support.au@decisioninc.com. I'll make sure that goes into the email that we send to you when we send you out the PowerPoints, or I'll drop it into the bottom of this PowerPoint, whatever's easier. And we're happy to do those things. We do a lot of those upgrades, and it's a lot easier and faster for us to do it than for you to figure out how to do it. All the help's inside QlikHelp, help.qlik.com if you need it, but we're certainly doing a lot of those, including our own just now. So we'd be happy to do that for you. And I'd really like to talk to people about how Decision Inc. can more broadly help you than just the Qlik environment. We've certainly changed a little bit. One of our consulting resources just finished getting certified in TensorFlow. And whilst I'd heard of TensorFlow, I actually got to see a demonstration of it this morning. So it's machine learning, and the TensorFlow I saw was a video, and there were things going past in the video, and TensorFlow was working to identify what those things were. So it was putting boxes around people and cars and planes and all sorts of really cool things. So lots of interesting things that can happen inside there. I don't claim to be an expert, but I can put you in touch with people inside Decision Inc. that have run projects in the TensorFlow space, including our new guy that's just been certified to help in those cases. So that's about it from me. It could be that we've finished a little bit early, but I'm certainly happy to answer some questions. And so I guess the first question that has come up is around what does it take to start to think about moving from, pulling your data from a variety of sources in a kind of manual sense and dropping them into a lake or into a warehouse. What does it take to do that using that Qlik data integration tool? So that was the Compose, and then into the catalog. My experience in that, we've just sold one of these into a really large insurer, is that it's not very complicated to get it up and running. So you're looking at maybe a week maximum to get it up and connected. And once it's connected, there's a couple of steps. The first step is something called replicate, which takes the data from where it is and moves it into a staging area. And that process does something called change data capture, and change data capture is around identifying the records that have been added, deleted, and changed, and only moving those records across into the staging area. Now, Qlik does that in a really smart way by not running agents across, your SAP or your SQL warehouse or whatever you've got. It does those by reading the commit logs for those systems and then pulling the data from there. So it's impactless on the operational systems, which I think is really, really smart and clever. And once those pieces are dropped into the staging area, it could be that that's the end of the process. You just want to pull things out of, let's say, something that's on-prem, and you're looking to put it up into a web-based space. If you then say, well, actually, Snowflake's the thing we want to use, we'd like to build our Snowflake data warehouse. So the next step then is to take that data that's sitting in the staged area and then bring it into Snowflake, and Qlik Compose does that for you in a really efficient and clever manner without needing to, for you to have 10 or 15 SQL gurus coding things for days and days and months. You can actually have those things happening in an automated sense. And maybe you have one SQL guru that reviews the code and makes sure they're happy with everything. As I mentioned before, the default methodology is Data Vault, which takes into account lots of complications, puts in satellite tables that help us with things like slowly changing dimensions. I'm getting too geeky, I know, but that process doesn't have to be Data Vault. We can choose alternate schemas if need be, and we can get it into Snowflake really easily and quickly for you. And so that's really powerful. And if you need to have your analysts and others running through and getting data sets that they want to pull, you can use Catalog to display those pieces to people other than the few people that have got access into Snowflake directly. Second question has come in. The question, I guess, is around moving to SaaS and around how the security might work on that. Generally speaking, for the clients we've moved into the cloud, there's one requirement. If you're going to have some things in one place, let's say on-prem, and you're going to have some other things in another place, say a Qlik SaaS or another SaaS environment, you don't want Qlik to think of those people accessing via the variety of spaces as being different license holders, because then you'll be using 3 licenses for somebody where you should use 1. So the rule of thumb is that you use a common IDP. Let's say Azure AD or Okta is 2 that I know fairly well, so that when someone logs into the SaaS clouds, when someone logs into the on-prem version and someone else logs into Google Cloud, as an example, they're all using the same IDP, and therefore Qlik sees them as the same user. So I think that's the first part of the question. And so the other parts of security, I guess, I don't have the numbers and the names of the security protocols that Qlik obeys, but essentially, I think the bottom line is with that is that the protocols that you would expect are already in the SaaS product. So in terms of setting up the cloud, what I would suggest for most people, including the person that asked that question, is that we do a simple trial period of say a month. We'll set up SaaS for you. It takes just a few minutes to set it up. You can be up and running. The first step, I would say, is that you bring an application or two manually up into the area, and you set up your IDP. The last one I did was to Azure AD a couple of weeks ago, and that one took about an hour. There were 3 or 4 of us on a Teams meeting, me being fairly useless and a couple of other people inside the client who understood Azure AD much better than I did. And so within an hour or two, we had it all set up and working, and people were being authenticated in the manner that you would expect. And once you've got that up and running, you can go ahead and start using Sense up in the cloud and do some tests. It does look a little bit different to the on-prem version, and one of the main changes is that in the on-prem version, we talk about streams. So the logic is around things called streams, and the streams logic doesn't apply in the same way. It's not called a stream anymore when you get up into the SaaS cloud. The logic is somewhat similar. However, we tend to think of people as administrators or consumers of information, and the administrators inside there can add people into the various, and I've forgotten the right word for it, but the buckets of places where people go inside the SaaS cloud. So one other question is around the time it takes to upgrade to 2020. It depends where you're coming from. We have a couple of clients that I would call laggards that are still on fairly old versions of the software. Darren and the support team here have some specific rules that they follow in terms of upgrades. So if you're on an older version, they will move you through a couple of intermediary versions to get you up to the latest one. And that's the best practice that Qlik's recommending. And so we follow those best practices. If you're on June and you're going to September, it's definitely less than half a day per environment for the upgrade. Darren did the final upgrade into production after all our tests, and it took about an hour all up, and most of that was because there was a Windows update to happen along the way. So there was no drama with that one for us. But we were only one version behind. So if you're 10 versions behind, it takes a little bit longer, and you're probably expecting a day for upgrade and a day for test in each environment, just to make sure that everything's working the way you want. And that's a little bit all. The one thing I didn't mention about the cloud environment is that a couple of versions ago, they opened up the ability to use extensions. And so we actively work with some of the bigger extension makers as well as the freebies that are around. And so we work with VizLib and AnyChart in particular around extensions, and those extensions, generally all of those extensions work up in the SaaS cloud as well. There is one that needs to be installed only on-prem because it has a database in the background, but I'm hearing that that'll all be resolved soon. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming along to the presentation and the webinar. I really appreciate you taking the time to do these things. My plan is to attempt to follow up with everybody and have a chat and see what you thought of the webinar, get some suggestions on other topics that you want covered, but also see whether anyone's willing to take the plunge to move to SaaS or have a test of it, and also talking about what else Decision Inc can help you with. Thank you very much.